Hey everyone, welcome to Handing the Shame Back, a channel dedicated to the incredible survivors of child sexual abuse here in Aotearoa and across the world. Normally what I bring to you is a survivor or someone involved quite heavily in the healing aspect of this journey we're all on. The special news today is that it's my honour to bring to you a special on the Royal Commission of Inquiry into State Care, Abuse and Care here in New Zealand. Now, I need to give you a trigger warning because I've asked these fabulous men not to filter what they say. I want you guys to have the truth and the impact of what they have had to suffer, survive, and especially in the case of Malcolm, just endlessly try to be heard. So I think what you're going to hear today will shock you. No apologies for that. It's time for people to stop looking away and start leaning in. So I'm going to start with a couple of stats which will horrify you. So in the work I do, which I'm so privileged to do, I meet many amazing survivors, and our stats show, and usually generally across the world, that up to 1 in 3 children are sexually abused. The Royal Commission of Inquiry into Abuse and Care said that of the over 670,000 children that were abused in their care over 7 long decades, 70 years plus, over 220,000 of them were abused. Now, you may not be a great mathematician, but I'm here to tell you that's 1 in 3. So for those who doubt this exists or that this still does not continue today, shame on you. We can't keep trying to share this information with you. We know that there are many who took their own lives over those 7 decades, and that's a shame our country will have to live with. But we do know there's over 2,300 survivors of this inquiry over this period of time who are still with us. So welcome to the show, and I'm going to quickly get people to introduce themselves, and then we're going back to Malcolm. So Malcolm, can we just have a quick intro, please, about you and yeah.
Well, I'm Malcolm Richards. I've been fighting this since I was 20. I'm now 64. Petitioning the government to allow me to take a case of torture inside New Zealand. Failing that, had to end up following Paul to the UN, which forced the police to reopen the investigation they've been refusing all attempts to have reopened and look back into the Lake Ellis situation.
Okay, thank you. Neil, what's your story with abuse and care, please?
Hi, Gloria. Yeah, I went to Dilworth School in the 70s and suffered sexual abuse there as a student. I approached the Trust Board to get acknowledgement or get investigation. We've managed to organise. I started a class action of 150 victims. We know there are around 233 victims. We know that there's possibly, at this stage, maybe at least 38 suicides. So basically, I can't sit down knowing that the institution knew what was going on and never stopped it. And at this point, there has been no accountability for the people that created that environment. And my fight is to get accountability and justice for myself and for those others, and especially those guys that aren't with us anymore.
Thanks, Neil. Phil, Philip, apologies.
Yeah.
Welcome.
That's all right. No, it feels good.
Welcome back to the show.
Yes.
Yeah. What's your, if you can introduce us and introduce.
I'm Phill Ashworth. I gave evidence in 2008 to police, chats with police in Sydney, and that started what became the biggest criminal investigation in Australian history, and that spread worldwide and started the Royal Commission that went for 5 years. I got a payout from the church and the school in 2019, so it took 11 years. And I'm still sort of fighting that and helping people, and just trying. And my biggest thing is getting the word out there because no one wants to hear it.
And you're a Kiwi. You're living back in New Zealand.
Yeah. I've been in New Zealand most of this time for the last 20 years, and was back and forth from Australia a lot doing the court case there. But it was too much to sort of be in Australia, and it was all over the news there a lot, and it was sort of nice being over here to hide away from it. But then, of course, it all happened here too. So, which is I'm pleased it did.
Yeah, 100%. And thank you, because we know that was the first one that got some light, which is why I wanted you on this panel today. So Malcolm, back to you.com. All about you.com. So the warrior that you are, the kind of the struggles that you've had, and now suddenly the Royal Abuse and Commission of Inquiry into Abuse and Care is suddenly saying, oh yes, it did happen. So can you talk us through a little of what you've experienced in the last 10 days since this came to light?
Oh, yeah. Well, I didn't believe a word of any of the MPs that spoke at the tabling, because most of them had not responded to me or refused to meet with me. So, seems a bit odd what they were saying. The Prime Minister promised to have the Lake Alice sorted by Christmas, but I put a spanner in that works because they didn't seem to know the rules around torture redress. They can't just put up a figure and have a vote and get it accepted and pay it out. They have to do it person by person, individual basis, on the suffering of the person. Some people, they haven't got over it, but managed to hold down jobs and work all their life, and others never worked in their life at all, and bits in between. So you can't just put out one figure and expect it to work. And everybody's requirement for rehab is totally different. Different things work for different people, and some don't want any, some don't need any, some need lots, and so what they said to me was, well, how the hell are we going to do this by Christmas? I said, well, if you hadn't have refused to meet with me for over 9 months and found a way forward, then you would have known the rules around redress. If you had read your emails where I sent you the rules around the UN's rules around torture redress, you would have also known them. It's a bit late to say, well, hell, we can't do what we promised because we didn't know. So yeah, I don't know. It's still going to be quite a long, drawn out process, I think. At least Christmas next year.
What's your feeling around appetite for the government to follow through with what they say?
Not a lot. I mean, they've smacked what do you call them, civil servants over the hand with a wet bus ticket for hiding information from them and not doing their jobs and keeping this suppressed for so long. But they can't put all the blame on them because many MPs knew of this. I mean, Finlayson knew that I was trying to get a case of torture in New Zealand because he refused me to do it. I've written to so many MPs, and yeah, they can't say they didn't know.
No.
But they seem to be blaming civil servants for the lack of knowing things.
Yeah, and you know, that whole accountability piece, Malcolm, own it. I'm so sorry this happened to any individual, let alone a vulnerable child in our country. I'm so sorry. You know, that's a start, isn't it, from our officials? I did hear our PM say on Sunday night, 6 o'clock news, yes, it's terrible that happened then, but it doesn't happen now.
Yeah, exactly. Still,
Really?
very much happening. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, civil servants are like Una Jargos, who lied to the Royal Commission under oath. I know it's a lie because it was about me, and I know what the truth is. So, yeah, just completely lied. Yeah, well, we have to go through things like that when you get a bit upset and you say, right, well, when I get up there, I'm going to give her both barrels, you know, going to tell her off. And then I have armed police turn up at my house. Those are the sort of things you go through when you're fighting this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as you're, Philip and Neil, as you're listening to this, what's emerging in you? Malcolm's been trying for 44 years to get any sort of acknowledgement about this. What are you guys feeling as you're listening to this?
Well, I'll jump in now, and what I would say is they only act on when they have to, and when they are exposed with something, and they're using most of this Royal Commission in Australia that I exposed was used to cover up knowledge and information, and the thing is, nothing's still done. Even 8 years after the Royal Commission findings, still nothing has happened. And this is the problem we've got. You know, we're facing judiciary and governments and police that do not want to do anything about it unless they really have to. And so it's not really getting anything done. You know, it's not exposing this. It's not. There should be major arrests. I mean, the world's still waiting for the Epstein list. That still hasn't come out. So this is all around the world, same bullshit. And and it upsets me, really upset me when the Royal Commission findings here. I mean, I went into a wobbly because I just knew it was going to be the same thing again as it was in Australia and as it still is there. I mean, 28 names were suppressed in one of the Royal Commissions over there, and those names are still suppressed. And if the world knew of those 28 names, the world would be absolutely shocked, because 3 of them are ex-prime ministers. They're high court judges. They're the most prominent people in Australia, and they've been involved in pedophilia, and they need to be exposed. The world needs to know the truth, and these people in government and police, judiciary all keep hiding it, keep covering it up, and it's just so frustrating. It's so annoying. And the public really, public don't want to hear about it half the time,
Well, and what you're saying, I think, Malcolm and Neil, you would have heard this too, that part of that abuse into care inquiry also uncovered the pedophile ring. I think, was it down in Dannevirke, Malcolm, where they had children being trafficked to politicians. So, you know, and people go, no, not in New Zealand. Yes, here in New Zealand.
That's right.
And this kind of, you know, the world is shocked that this happens here in New Zealand, and the similarities between what you saw over in Australia, Philip, and what you experienced. That was a global pedophile network. That wasn't one state in Australia, that reached across the world. And
That's right.
This commission of inquiry here, and what Malcolm's referring to, this went way beyond what staff were doing. Malcolm, what do you think of that?
Yeah, it was Dunedin, I think, not Dannevirke.
Oh, was it? No. Began with D.
Yeah. But yeah, the police were all linked to that, and MPs as well. And survivors have told me of a social worker who took them in a van to a political party's fundraiser to be handed out to donors. So,
Good God.
there's a lot more to come out of all this yet.
Yep. So, Neil, as you're, you know, listening to this and reacting on the inside, what are you thinking as you're hearing?
It's the cover-up. It's the cover-up that enables and perpetuates the child sexual abuse of, you know, of the thing that gets me is the inability for our legal system, I won't call it a justice system, to charge people with perverting the course of justice or this vicarious liability. The burden of proof, the threshold is too high, and I think the covering up of abuse is arguably worse than the actual event, because it just enables that environment. Far more kids get abused when that environment is enabled than one perpetrator can do. It's and there's just this ineptness to, and everyone's shocked, and they're this and they're that. But the thing is, they've known the whole time. They can't say that this Royal Commission, that they've just suddenly discovered there was child sexual abuse.
Yeah,
They've known, and Malcolm's been trying to lift the lid on torture. And finally they have that acknowledgement, but how long and at what price? It's a disgrace that the people in charge are responding to this issue in the way that they have, and the way that they are. And I am fully demanding that the government look at charging people with, criminally charging people with perverting the course of justice for those people that knew and perpetuated that environment and did nothing.
So I guess as we're talking about all this, one of the things I've often been told, and Malcolm, you and I have a mutual friend, as in the wonderful Kenneth Clearwater. And look, we know that there are so many aspects and complexities and layers to all of it. We're all survivors, we get it. But who doesn't get it is the people who are tasked with providing the redress or providing solutions. And what we know to be true is that they will get in the psychiatrists, they will get in the people with the degrees to offer the solutions, and they get well paid, make no mistake, to sit at the table and do that. survivors, according to Ken, turn up. Sometimes they're not very welcome to, by the way, don't get compensated for their time, and are almost asked to keep hidden the most important aspects of what went on because the panel or the redress committee only want to deal with this, thanks. So I'd love to know anyone's experience with that, because the cover-up, as you said earlier, Neil, it's the theme of the show, isn't it?
I think you have to look at the definition of redress. Now, redress, I'm hearing, is a synonym for financial compensation, but redress is so much more than financial compensation. And with survivors, victims, because not all of them are survivors, have different needs. And my need is accountability and justice. And part of of redress, I believe redress has 5 elements. I believe it's recognition, remorse, refrain, recompense, and restitution. Restitution is trying to make right what was done. And part of that is accountability and justice. And when you're getting an apology for what the pedophile did for the abuse, but it's not including the role that those people had to play, or the state had to play, or the institution had to play, then it's falling short. And it falls short in the refrain, because then it can still continue to happen if those people aren't being called out, or they're not changing the way things are done. So for me, redress, I'm looking closely at the way that word redress is being used as purely a synonym for financial compensation. And that's one of my big messages, is that redress, when we start looking at the word, we have to analyze what that definition is of redress and what that actually really entails, because it encapsulates so much more. It's the healing journey, it's the restoration of mana. It's if you're just paying out some money, but there's no acknowledgement of the role that the state played or the institution played, then it's hollow, and it's denying people the opportunity to heal.
Yeah, interesting you say that, because it brings me back to what Malcolm alluded to earlier, which is, each person should be taken on their merit. Each person needs to be seen and dealt with in their unique way. And so kind of well done to you, Malcolm, for stopping the government just doing a one-size-fits-all in terms of payout. Because,
well, that's exactly excuse me, how the claimants of Lake Ashworth were screwed over before, because the government offered the lawyer a set amount. The lawyer said, will you accept it or not? And if you get 51% saying yes, well, then that's it. He accepts on behalf of all the people. So,
yeah. So good on you for stating that. I can see the alignment between what he was working with and what you are. And I guess, Philip, for you, what you did in coming out and making sure this saw the light of day is, what did you notice in terms of that whole redress situation over in Sydney?
Yeah, well, it was a different situation over there, because it was all class action lawyers that took over and did the payouts. So I had lawyers which happened to know, which happened to go to the school as well. So funny enough, and yeah, it What's really been frustrating me the most out of all this is the public's response. And there's enough, all the cover-ups obvious, and it's always has been. And the reason why the government and police and judiciary get away with this so much is because the public aren't saying anything. No one's saying anything. I can put a post up about other controversial things, and I get 50 replies by the end of the day. And I put up, about the Royal Commission findings and on a public forum, and I get 4 replies. And one of them telling me to, why don't you get over it? That one makes me laugh, because, well, it doesn't, but yeah, it's. I wish I could. I wish I could actually take time out after I got my payout and enjoy my life and have some time to myself and heal, but I can't, because I can't heal properly at all, because it's still going on. It's still happening everywhere, and in this beautiful country of New Zealand, the statistics are worse than it is in Australia. That's what I noticed, which was quite disturbing. Yeah, there's just not enough done, and they just keep going around with this paperwork and cover-ups and the what's the term? Collateral damage. They're just trying to fix what they can and into the least amount of cost, and really it should be an open book and all of it, and get it all out there, and lots of media coverage of it. There's never enough media coverage of this. I've said to people, yeah, well, how about the Royal Commission findings? What Royal Commission? That's what most response I get from people in this country, here in New Zealand. People don't even know it's existing.
I've always felt that the bigger group that need to be reached are what I call the enablers and the gatekeepers. So those who suspect something but say nothing, or those who are very uncomfortable with knowing something and they don't act. And I've often thought, and there isn't a survivor in this group, I imagine, who has not heard the words Philip used, which is, can't you just get over it and move on with your life? Hey, wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something, team?
Oh, God,
Imagine
I wish.
Imagine if we could. But, these people have no idea, and these are often loved ones as well who probably mean. But the point being, a great criminal act occurred and kept occurring, and we know, don't we, or we're starting to recognise more and more that the smaller the shoe size, the less the interest, really. People talk about how children are the most important thing. Really? Are they? Look at how we're dealing with adults who were children, severely abused and neglected within the care system. So, there was a road I was taking us down, which has now escaped me. So if anyone has anything they would like to bring up out of what we've talked about so far, please rescue me.
It's something just going on from what I was saying before. What I say to people now, and what I challenge people now in the public is do we have a world safe for children? And no one can answer me that. Yes, no one can say yes, we have a safe world. I've had replies like, "Oh, well, my children are safe." Yeah, okay. What about the rest of the children in the world? We've got to stop thinking about our little micro, lives, and think about the broader world, and think about what this event has effect on all of us. And it's yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I don't have the answers yet, but it's certainly frustrating, isn't it? And imagine both you guys and yourself, Gloria, have all had the same thing when it comes to telling people. You can see them glazing over and not wanting to hear it.
I know. The global hand signal I released last year for under 16s to use is being used, by the way, in our country.
Wow, fantastic.
It is being used across the world, but it's being used here, which I'm delighted about. Guess what? Tell me if any of you are shocked. I have approached print media, I have approached TV media to say, please, can we release this hand signal? Let's save some kids. Nothing to see here. They no interest, nothing. And shame, because we can talk about what is currently happening. We can talk about what has happened, but isn't it everyone's responsibility, as you just said, Philip, to keep our kids safe? Malcolm, you got beautiful grandkids. Imagine if they came home and started doing that to you. Because the misnomer, I believe, is that children will tell. No, they won't. Neil, you mentioned this earlier. They're far less likely to tell anyone because they see what's happened when others tell. But what they will is they'll show us through their behaviour. So, yeah. So, simple things like that. And I think we've got to create somehow a movement here in New Zealand within the gatekeepers, the enablers, and those who are good people but do nothing. So what's your legacy? Oh yeah, I thought he was a pedophile, but I didn't want to say anything. Really?
I think the buck stops with government, really. And I think at the end of the day, what we realise is this problem is so endemic that it's not something that survivors can fix, and
yeah,
and it just goes to the top. It goes to the top, and it needs that complete reanalysis and re-envisionment of what safety is for children in this country. And I think we almost need to stop and re-envisage and replan, and look at all of our our laws and around safety of children, and around the I mean, it's always been in it's in the 1961 Crimes Act, but the police, for whatever reason, find it difficult to apply the law, apply the act in terms of charging people for covering up or being aware, and either not doing anything or caning and punishing kids for reporting. You know, I mean, that's not doing nothing. That's actually committing an offence, and it's clearly, you know, not investigating and just caning multiple boys for reporting abuse about the same pedophile. You know, that has to be criminal. The fact that it can't be criminal and can't be seen to be crossing some kind of threshold, we got to relook at those thresholds, and we got to start getting serious around calling out the enablers and the gatekeepers, because they're as bad, if not worse, than the pedophiles themselves.
Because there's permission to act, isn't there?
Yeah.
Permission to carry all of this on.
Yeah.
And, you know, we got to hold the hope, and we got to protect the future generation and generations. And look, one thing I am holding on to is that, you know, it wasn't that many decades ago where gay men were criminalized for having relationships or having sex, and not just criminalized but tortured in some cases. Well, that eventually changed, and now it's, oh, okay, oh, so he's met him, that's great, good luck, you know, nothing to see here. But my wish is for this whole child sexual abuse thing to become more and more a conversation, and more educating our children. And I think we need, and Malcolm, I'd love to know what you see or your thoughts are about this, but I don't know if we'll ever completely stop this abuse and care, but what key elements need to be in place so that there are enough protection or people who would protect available? What do you see? What would your kind of wish be?
Well, police need a lot more training to not push children away. Like when I went to report, I was so afraid, I was sweating, I was shaking. They thought I was on some sort of drugs and threatened me with arrest and sent me on my way instead of sitting me down and give me a cup of tea and calming me down and taking a statement. I mean, and I'm not surprised about the media not doing too much, because I was interviewed quite a bit after the tabling of the report, and most of the child murders I talked about weren't reported, a tiny fraction. But I witnessed a child killed by Dr. Leeds, and they don't want to investigate it. Police say, well, you know, it's there's no one left alive to charge. It's not in the public's best interest. It would cost millions and millions of dollars to scan all the area at Lake Alice to try and find bodies. And,
Crap.
you know, there's no one left alive to charge, so it's not worth our while.
Awful.
We're not just talking about a few kids in care getting bashed and raped. We're talking about children in care also being murdered, and there were quite a few at Lake Alice. So it's up another whole level there, and still not been investigated.
Awful. Mm.
I'm just taking a moment. What's more important than the life of a child?
Just devastating, isn't it? Really, you know, why isn't something done about that? You know, like that's probably the most important thing. You know, to keep exposing what, if things get exposed, then let's keep exposing it. You know, it's the world needs to know and understand how bad this is and how deeply it's set in our society, and how well it's hidden in plain sight, and how much they get away with constantly. It's just mind-boggling, and how the judiciaries and courts and government protect them as well. When they do get caught, they get protected again. You know, and the, you know, why isn't there any more investigations? Why isn't there any more arrests? I mean, the headmaster of the school I went to, Knox, he covered it up. You know, there was an internal investigation in 1984, and police came to the school, and somehow they left again, and nothing happened. And I got interviewed by the headmaster and was told to shut up and never talk about things at school that happened. And I was scared. I was terrified of him. You know, we called him the Snake, funny enough, and yet he's had no charges for covering up any of the crimes. Here's an interesting thing I recently discovered. The payment I got from the church and the school, 1/3 came from the church, 1/3 from the school, and 1/3 from insurance. And I was curious about that, so I asked a few questions about that, which took a while for me to get answers. And so apparently they put in a clause in their liability insurance against pedophiles. So I traced that back and found out that guess when that clause was added to their insurance policy? 1984. So, you know, how corrupt is that? You know, that's cheating that's a criminal act there. Lying to insurance. Well, they obviously had it worked in with them. They're all together. Patting each other's backs. Just rotten to the core. The whole thing, all of it. The government, judiciary, police, rotten to the core.
And
Yeah.
Neil, that's probably something you might want to investigate yourself. See if
we're looking at that.
and
We're looking
look at an insurance. See if there's
insurance.
any insurance policy.
Yeah.
I think with Dilworth, I think they
Waste the money.
they added insurance, insuring the trustees. I think they've just added that in the last few years.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's what's that? What would we call that, Malcolm? There's knowledge of pedophilia existing to the point where the board or the governance decide they need to add a clause into their insurance policy.
It's disturbing, isn't it?
That's
how do they get away with that in the first place? I mean, and then the insurance gave them money, paid out lots of people.
So, the cover up is a theme. What's another theme you guys see when you look? There are just so many similarities and crossovers, and
there is
that even when you were talking before, Philip, about the whole Epstein list, that's never going to see the light of day. There's too many politicians, and
it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah. But it says everything again. So,
one of the things I have is concerns about the Dilworth. We did an independent inquiry conducted by Dame Sylvia Cartwright, ex-Governor General, and Francis Joychild KC, and that was in September last year. So that's pretty much gone into archives unread. And
wow,
I've had a letter from police saying that the police operation Beverly for Dilworth closed a few years back. I said you need to go over this with a fine-tooth comb because I think there's evidence in here for perverting the course of justice. I've got a letter from police saying that they had no intention of reading the report. That there's difference between evidence and a report like that, an inquiry report, and they will not be reading the report in the near future. The police operation is closed 2 years ago, and they will not be even reading it.
Wow,
that's ridiculous. That's terrible.
And I've got it in writing. So you're going, okay, well, now where does that, is the Dilworth inquiry, independent inquiry, like a mini Royal Commission, with recommendations, and is it sort of like a mini thing happening here, particularly with the Dilworth redress process that they put in place that was not collaborative. They refused to collaborate with survivors. They put in their own scheme. They put in their own independent redress panel that are just administering their scheme. I went to that redress panel and I left in tears after about 20 minutes. I ended up crying in the street because of the aggression of the panel leader. And
Jesus.
It was because basically they're administering Dilworth's scheme, and I was asking questions around my own safety about entering a process that wasn't collaborative, and the issues that I had about ensuring that I was going to be, by entering the process, not worse coming through it. But all the things around redress that I was wanting were completely ignored to the point of being pretty much attacked. And so, and as victims, survivors, we're caught in a loop because we go to Dilworth with our concerns. They say it's nothing to do with us. It's the independent redress panel. You go to the independent redress panel and they're saying, well, all we can do is administer the program. If you've got a problem, go and speak to Dilworth. So we get caught in that loop of they're just playing us off in this loop. Then we get offered money, and within that is a full and final clause that says if we accept this, we cannot make any claim against Dilworth in the future. So I've just received my offer about 3 weeks ago, but I will not be receiving any money when I have to sign away my right to get justice and accountability from the school. So that's
Good
what
on
we
you. Wow.
that basically our redress has got a clause now. I'm hoping that the Royal Commission report and the recommendations there will probably override that clause that doesn't allow us to make any claim for justice through accepting the money, because it just seems inherently wrong, almost illegal, that they should be offering victims money with a clause that says if we take and accept this money, we have no right, we forfeit the right to get justice.
Well, and that is just criminal, and it's exactly, I think, what Malcolm said earlier when they were first offered recompense. I think you said 51%, Malcolm, agreed to accept. Is that correct?
We don't know the exact percentage, but we, once you get past halfway, it's going to be accepted. So it might have been 70 or 80%, but people that have been abused a lot are so desperate and poor that they'll just take any offer at all. But I told them don't even come to me with that sort of offer, because it won't be accepted.
But I think, and going back to, I think you're all in agreement with this. Don't give me a figure, which might sound great, if I then don't have any right to get any justice, because isn't that just another form of a cover-up? Pay you off to shut up.
Yeah. Well, it's horrific, because I have to walk away from my redress. I have to walk away from my from any kind of financial reimbursement to and I have to choose. I'm put in a position of choosing. What do I want? Do I want some money, or do I want justice? And it's like I look at these guys that have taken their lives, the guys that their lives were derailed, their lives never got started. I look at guys with mental health and drug and alcohol issues, and I look at my grandkids, and I want a safer world for them. And I say, well, there's no way I can take the money. So it's been very re-traumatizing, being put in a position of making this choice, and that's modern day redress. And Dilworth are going to be looking at this as some kind of gold standard, or this is some kind of template that the government can use. And that's my big message to government, is that this is so far away from best practice. In fact, it's just not fit for purpose. Yet they're, thinking that they're doing something really, really good. And I think that, the government with a similar backyard to Dilworth's might look at it and go, oh yeah, we can sort of, if we can slide this one in and do a similar kind of thing, similar style, and get away with it, but pretend, and with a degree of duplicity, pretend that we're doing the right thing, but knowing that they're not. It's just half-assed.
I'll add that in Australia, when I got my payout, I had to sign an agreement too. And the only clause in that agreement, because of legalities there that are set in place, the only thing I was not allowed to talk about was the amount. And that was it. So anything else I still talk about, and was still free to. Hearing what I've just heard now, I'm just flabbergasted. And honestly, it is, there is evidence showing that it's deeper and darker and more corrupted here than it is in Australia. And they've been getting away with more things here, and can get away with more things here, because I don't know why, smaller country, people are, comfortable and don't want to hear about it. Many reasons. Yeah. It's shocking. It's shocking what you guys have been through and had to be the way you've been treated, both of you. It's disgusting, and my heart goes out to both of you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've given Dilworth twice this document, How to Engage Sensitively with Survivors, which came out of the New South Wales government, following the Australian Royal Commission.
Yes.
And that sort of
one.
step-by-step process of what to do. They refuse to acknowledge receiving it. And that's the frustrating thing, is that, I'm giving them the tools to do it right, to write the template and proper redress. And we're not unreasonable as survivors. We're just wanting to be able to move on with our lives and Dilworth have the means to do the right thing. Of all the schools, it's one of the wealthiest private schools in the world, with assets of over $2 billion. So, but they just want to pay lawyers. They want to do other things other than look after their alumni, and it's but then say now they're safe. They're a safe school now, and they suddenly care. They care about the kids now. But that's what was almost re-traumatizing, as well as the fact that they're putting in place all these they're window dressing things to say how safe they are now, but they just don't give a shit about any of the people that they've harmed.
That's what they did with Knox Grammar School too. They had this campaign about how wonderful it is now, and they were advertising again. And then, years after all the courts and the Royal Commission, and I think it was back in 2019, 2019, there was another teacher arrested in the school. There was a new teacher that had same thing, arrested for the same stuff.
Yeah, Dilworth have been doing half-page ads. They've been doing a big campaign on on being a safe school, meet the safe team, and it's just hard to watch. It's really hard to watch when and I value the school being
Really
safe.
is.
I value efforts to make the school safe, but it needs to be done with it needs to be consistent, and it needs to
yeah, I'm on the phone at the moment.
yeah, it just needs to consistency, really.
So look, we're coming into the last few minutes of this discussion, and incredibly informative, and I think interesting the similarities, unfortunately, across all of this abuse and care. But I just want to end, and I'll start with you, Malcolm. Don't you love it that I always start with you? So there's two things, please. One, what's one thing you would like to see happen out of this Royal Commission into Abuse and Care? And two, what would you like the world to know?
Can't be one thing. They've got to leave children in their homes rather than take them into care in the first place, and support the parent to look after their children better. Well, that would end all these boot camps and everything that they're restarting up, because I don't believe, well, they're not safe, because you put any child into a situation like that, that's mental abuse to start with, regardless of whether they're abused sexually or beaten or anything else. They're mentally abused, putting them into something like that, where most are only like that because their parents went through care and don't know any better. That's just support the parent, put stuff in place to help them, will cost less than having a rangatamariki, and it wouldn't take any more resources or any more money.
No. One thing you would like the world to know?
Me?
No, I'm talking to, it's all about Malcolm at the moment.
Oh, yeah, yep.
Don't ever give up. Just
Yes.
when there's an injustice, just keep going till it's put right. Don't stop. Don't give up.
Incredible, thank you. Neil,
Thanks.
one thing you would like to see happen?
I want to see an entity, a government entity that can go in to an institution, subpoena their records, and get stuck in. And like the fraud squad, like a division within the fraud squad, I want an entity that's set up that can call institutions to account, deal with above the law. And no one is making them do the right thing. They're not doing the right thing. They're lawyering up. I need an entity that can go in that's bigger than they are, that can investigate and charge. And I want people charged and held criminally accountable for covering up abuse.
Yep, thank you. Philip, last but not least.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I've given up on the judiciary and the legal system and the government. I don't think it's ever going to change with them. I think it's the public that's the most important now, is to get this out to the public and get people passionate and caring and actually hearing all this stuff, because the more the public moved and the more the public in demand change, then the more it will happen. And the problem is our few voices are not working. You know, we're just getting squashed. And I can tell you both now, or all three of you now, that what's happened in Australia, nothing's come of it, nothing, and it will continue to be nothing. And it you know, really upsets me and makes me angry. And so to me, it's the public, getting this out to the public, being a voice to the public constantly.
Okay, 100%. And what's one thing you would like the world to know?
How institutionalized this is in our government's judiciary and police forces worldwide.
Okay, so please, panel, stay right there. I'm just going to finish up with our audience. You know,
Thank you, Gloria.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. It's you know, I feel very honored to have these amazing survivors sitting here, and equally appalled that it needs to happen. So even though I'm a very small channel, I've got, I think, 5,000 subscribers, there are some good views, but I'm just one person. So I guess my plea to anyone watching is to share this. And, you know, we've got giants in the room, and I'm thinking about not just these three, but special mention again, you know, Malcolm's sitting here, he's been trying for 44 years. Unacceptable. Wow. And yet out of his mouth come the words, don't ever give up. So if that doesn't move you, don't watch this channel again. But, you know, really, we've got to talk about this. We've got to share this. We've got children currently experiencing this. When is that okay? It never is. So once again, from Handing the Shame Back, I see you, I stand beside you, I believe you, but my call to action is stop noticing things and start saying something or doing something.